YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back after a wild NFL trade deadline day here, grading all the trades that happened today, but also the ones that happened yesterday, and we threw the Kevin Byer trade in there as well. A lot of surprises, interesting ones. We predicted Chase Young and the Niners. We did not predict that compensation, though. Excited to break it down. Initial thoughts were on Twitter. You're missing out if you're not following that. Links pinned in the comments for that and our sponsors, Liquid IV GLD Shop. Giveaway for the GLD Shop down there as well. Full NFL coverage every single week. Join us on our channel. Like, subscribe to notifications on. Let's go on to all these trades, starting with the one that started the day, maybe the biggest one on the day, Montez Sweat to the Chicago Bears for a 2024 second-round pick. It's a little surprising to me. I don't think it's surprising in terms of a fit and what the Bears need. It's just where the Bears are at for this year and, the direction they're heading. It was a little bit of a surprise. We heard early today, we were talking about on Twitter, the Bears might be looking for a pass rusher like Sweat, and I kind of was mentioning they should not do it. And I'm kind of thinking, because we know the Falcons offered their third-round pick, which is like a mid-third-round pick. So maybe the Bears are offering their early third-round pick. And I'm like, it doesn't really make sense to do that now. Don't be desperate now. Wait till the offseason when all these guys are free agents, and that's when you make your moves because you have the money, you have the picks. Use those picks because you're still somewhat of a rebuild team. So then they not only turn around and do the trade, but they trade away their second-round pick, which is a very early second-round pick. So that easily beat the Falcons' mid-third-round pick there. So I don't love this trade for the Bears. I don't love it. Here's the positive. For all these trades, I always grade based off value. I don't grade just purely off how talented the player is. It's how it should be done. It's how I've always done it. This is one of those trades where if Montez Sweat ends, I think he's good. I think he's going to be good. But if he ends up being a monster, that has nothing to do with the trade. The trade grades are final. They're right now. It doesn't really change the grades right now. So it's just a little confusing for the Bears. I actually was originally going to be worse than a D because I come up with the positives and negatives. There's so many more negatives to this for the Bears. So many more things that don't make sense. But what's keeping it from being a god-awful grade is they get a pretty good player. They get a pretty good player in Montez Sweat. And, of course, I thought he'd be better than he is so far, right now. He's a little underwhelming, but he's a good player. And I'd say, he's going to be 28 next year for the Bears. I'd say he still has some upside, too. And they desperately needed a pass rusher. So some people most people agree with me. I think most logical people agree with me on the grade. But some people just kind of look at it that way, and that's it. That's the positive. But for so many reasons, doesn't make sense for the Bears. First off, is Montez Sweat worth an early second-round pick? And we're talking about easily a top 40 pick, possibly a top 35 pick, probably here from the Chicago Bears. Is he worth that just based on his talent? I think everyone's going to agree no. But then you factor in that he's on an expiring deal. You have to give him an extension. You kind of want to see how he can play to put a value on him for that extension. You also want to see him play away from Chase Young, Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne, away from those guys. An elite defensive line. How will he be with the Bears defensive line? So that's two different things because how is he going to be without those guys? And you want to see what his value is without those guys. So you factor in all those things. You factor in that the Bears didn't need to do this right now because they're not in win mode now. Win now mode. They can wait, they can get Sweat or they can get somebody else, something similar in free agency because they have the cap space. They also have they would have had 3 draft picks in the top 40. They have 2 in the first round right now because they gave up this one. So I thought it was teams that usually make these moves are the teams that are contenders, and they don't know. Those teams don't know if they can get him in the offseason because somebody might break the bank and might pay more, but they don't really care. Those teams don't care about it because they just want a guy to help them win right now. So this actually makes the Bears better right now, but is that actually a good thing? Because they're going to go from having the third or whatever pick to, or maybe stay there, but it could go to 5, 8, somewhere around there. And you have to extend him. He's also got a ton of leverage because a team that traded, obviously the Bears are going to have to extend him. And then Montez Sweat and his agency, they know that. So he's going to get overpaid. I would put him at $14-15 million per year. And that's even tough because he hasn't proven enough, and he hasn't proven he's good, but he hasn't proven, without that elite defensive line around him. That's another thing too. So they might almost have to overpay him as well. And most people agree with me. There's some people that are arguing with me, probably the people that are just a little too optimistic about their favorite team when they do things. But I think those people are kind of telling me that we wouldn't have been able to get him in free agency. First off, you don't know that. Second off, is the front office thinking like that? Or are you going like, we're not going to be able to get this? We're not going to be able to get a good pass rusher in free agency. And they were trying to get 3 different guys, so it's not like they had their sights set on one specific. This is the only guy between the trade candidates and the guys out of all the free agents, including him, that we would like, but if they're really thinking like, we won't be able to get a guy in free agency, then I think the front office is that sums it up, and they're doing a bad job. So that argument's not going to fly with me, or it shouldn't with anybody. I would rather keep the pick. I would rather, you could draft a pass rusher with one of those top 3 picks, and then you have him for 4 years. You don't have to give big money. I still think it's a need. Another thing, he's strictly a 4-3 defensive end as well. So I think Eberflus had a say. I think the Bears fans that wanted Eberflus and company gone, I think they're probably hating this right now because this increases the chances of them staying, because I think they had a say. And if they do move on from him, they want Montez Sweat to work. You don't trade a second-round pick just to get rid of him or anything like that. You want him to work. So you're going to need a specific scheme, 4-3 scheme, whether it's a head coach or maybe you hire an offensive guy, but then you need a specific defensive coordinator. And there's some bad ones out there, and there are some good ones, but they're kind of rare that they're available. So it kind of limited you if you do fire the staff. It kind of tells me they probably won't fire the staff. It also tells me that they felt like they needed a pass rusher, like a good pass rusher, because they're going to use those, and they'll trade that second-round pick because they're going to use those 2 first-round picks on other things. And so that means there are quite a few Bears fans that are insisting on Justin Fields. They're a little attached. They're saying he's got to be the guy. They will not be drafting a quarterback. Those people got to be upset about this as well, because they will be taking a quarterback with one of those 2 first. I already said that, but this makes it even more obvious because they made sure they went and got that pass rusher so they can focus on quarterback and whatever else with the draft, and they could use another pass rusher to pair along with him as well. So there are a lot of things that make this risky and make this questionable. Again, the positive part is they get a pretty good player. I still think he has a lot more to prove. They do have to extend him. I don't want them to overpay. I fear they will. And I guess Chase Young to me is better, younger, more could be more involved in a rebuild. People saying he's injured. He's not injured right now, actually. It could just be like the early part of his career. It could be moving forward, but who knows what's going to happen there. But there's just a lot of confusing things with the Bears making this deal right now. There's a reason the buyers are buyers and sellers are sellers, or the teams that don't do anything. There's a reason like the Niners are going out and getting a possible rental. There's a reason Eagles go out and get Kevin Byer. There's a reason for all that. The Bears, this just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's just you don't need to be desperate right now because you're not desperate to win a championship right now. So you use your assets, use what you have in the offseason. If you're thinking we won't be able to get him or anything similar in free agency, then you're doing something else wrong. You're doing something. So in terms of a value standpoint, which I grade things on, we're not going to grade off, I don't predict how guys will be. With these, it's just these grades are final right now. So that's where I'm at with that. I always come up with the positives and negatives, and there's just a lot of negatives here that just don't make sense for the Bears, with this. So a confusing one. The Commanders, I'm going to give them an A+. I didn't think they were going to get a second-round pick, and they get a top second-round pick. So the Commanders will have their first-round pick and a very early second-round pick along with their second-round pick as well. So this is big. What I think is the Commanders think they have the best interior duo in football, and they very well are up there. They very well could. They're up there, and they think their pass rushers are pretty solid, but they weren't really doing the trick. They think guys should be able to go off a little bit more with those guys. So let's get a pick, pretty good pick here, on a guy in an expiring deal that's going to be 28 years old, which isn't old, but. And they'd rather have a younger guy go along with it. So this is great. I mean, get an early second-round pick for Montez Sweat on an expiring deal. You don't need him for the rest of this year. You're not winning the Super Bowl or anything like that. I just much better than what I expected. So I'm giving the Commanders an A+ on this one. Excited what they have in store for the offseason. So Chase Young is maybe a little bit of a surprising trade. I predicted he'll go to the Niners, but I didn't think it would be for a lone 2024 third-round pick to the Commanders. So a little bit, they get more for Montez Sweat. I know Young had an injury in the past, but he's better. He's better. He's younger. He has a ton of upside. He was a top-of-the-line pick for a reason. So the Niners get Chase Young. The Commanders get a third round pick. And here's my grade. So it is pretty much the opposite of the Bears-Commanders trade in another Commanders trade here. I gave them a D. I just don't really get the point of trading Chase Young for a third-round pick. The Commanders and the Bears were pretty much opposite, I think, with on the day. Like the Bears were like, yeah, we're not going to be able to get this guy or somebody similar in free agency. Let's go out and trade, overvalue for him right now in the last trade. And then the Commanders, when it came to the Chase Young trade, they're like, we're going to let him walk in free agency. We're going to get a compensatory pick, but then we want to be big spenders in free agency, so we're not going to get that compensatory pick. It's going to get canceled out. So let's go get something for him right now. So the Commanders are confident about their free agency. That's what this tells me. They are confident with their free agency. They're going to be big spenders. They didn't think they were going to get the compensatory pick for Chase Young. So they went out and got a pick right now, but I thought they got undervalue while doing it. So I think a big moment is going to be the Commanders in free agency. If they do not go big in free agency this upcoming offseason, it is a big-time loss, a bigger loss, than this. So at the end of the day, I really look at value. Does the value match up with the player? I think they got undervalue. I think the argument is, well, yeah, they thought the compensatory pick could get canceled out. That's to be determined on what they do in free agency. But, I think the argument against maybe this being good for the Commanders is they're going in rebuild. But my argument against that, which is a very valid one, is that Chase Young could very, very, very well be part of a rebuild. At his age, how young he is, he's just getting going. He's getting good pressure on quarterbacks this year. He's been pretty productive. He already stops the run pretty well. Just got a lot of upside in getting after the quarterback. So I just don't agree with this one from the Commanders. You traded him for undervalue. I just don't see the point. You might as well just keep him. Extend him. He's also cheaper right now on an extension because, he's not going to get paid crazy amount of money. So I think it's a bargain. I'd extend him right now. You take that chance. I know he has injury concern, but you take that chance and he's playing right now. He's healthy right now. So I don't know if it's that much of a concern, but and I think in another year or after this year, he's probably going to be way more expensive, playing with the Niners. So I don't love it for the Commanders. I love the other one, obviously, but the Niners, easy A+ for them. They get a really good player. Who's going to get the most out of the Niners? Nick Bosa and the Niners will get the most out of Chase Young here. They're contending for a Super Bowl right now. So if he's a rental, it's fine because you get a good player to help you win a Super Bowl. And again, his value is at an all-time low right now. It's only going to go up, so you might be able to extend him. They're going to have a lot of cap rollover. They might be able to extend him for a decent price if they want to do that. If they don't, I bet he gets it's a pass rusher. I bet he gets a good contract. So that means the Niners will probably be getting a third, at worst, a fourth-round compensatory pick for them. They'll be getting the pick back. So this is how you do it right here. This is exactly how you do it. It's a win-win, across the board. Like whether it's to help them now, whether it's have them for the future, whether it's both. And you get the compensatory pick back likely. It's just totally worth it for a team like the 49ers here. They get him for undervalue. I thought he was worth the second-round pick, maybe more. So it was just tremendous for the 49ers. So that's going to be fun to watch. Nick Bosa and Chase Young. It's going to be crazy. So can't wait to see what they were fed up. Like, we lost 3 straight. Let's go get better. Let's go get better. Let's get after the quarterback. One of the most important things in football. Let's go do that at an even higher level. So you got to love it there. Next, this was yesterday trade. Leonard Williams went to the Seahawks. The Giants got a 2024 second-round pick and a 2025 fifth-round pick. I was very surprised about the compensation on this one as well. Leonard Williams, I thought, would be a fourth-round pick, and then if the Giants pay most of his salary, maybe a third-round pick, and they did pay most of his salary, but they ended up getting a second and a fifth. Now, it's not a high-end second, but it's still a second-round pick, and you get a fifth-round pick in 2025. Expiring deal, he's kind of went downhill since Martindale became the defense coordinator. The defense is looking pretty good under Martindale, so it's not like it's a big-time Martindale issue. So I think this has way more value. The second and the fifth round pick. I think the Giants were going to let him walk, and third round pick maximum for the compensatory pick. So they're a team that, based on what's going on this year, maybe they got to be more of a retool. I don't want to say rebuild, but a retool team this offseason. So get some picks, get more talent. It's fantastic. Get a second and fifth round pick here. I meant to show my grades. And this, so pretty much in this, I've never given out so many A pluses in my life in one video, but the Giants get an A plus. They were not supposed to get a second round pick from him. They get a second and a fifth. They're going to use those picks. They probably, again, he's been underwhelming in the Don Martindale era in the Giants, so it's an easy A plus. For the Seahawks, I give him a D plus. I'm sure he's going to be a good player with them, but I just look at value. I'm aware the Giants paid most of his contract. The Seahawks still have like $6.5 million left over after the deadline. They didn't need the Giants to pay that much, so I don't like giving up a bigger capital. I don't like that. Again, I think he's going to be a good player for them. I like the idea of him kind of being versatile, moving around a bit. So that again, he's going to be good for them. But I'm just a value guy when it comes to these trades. I think they paid way overpriced. I also don't love the fit. I know he'll be like a versatile piece, which could be good, but this is a guy that's played over or in most time inside the tackle, so he is not an edge rusher. He's not rushing from outside. He's not rushing the edge. So and he's a very, very similar style player as Draymond Jones. So what's the plan here? I'm sure they have a plan to play both of them. They might play Leonard Williams outside. They might play him over the tackle. They'll play him at D tackle too. And again, I'm sure he'll be good. I would have just preferred them to go for more of an edge rusher because that was, because Jaron Reed's playing good on the inside. Draymond Jones, a lot of upside there. You kind of wish you had more from him with that big free agency signing, but I think he's young. He can get there. So it's interesting the value they gave up. It's interesting that they felt like they needed the Giants to pay all of that. So I know they need him to pay some. And it's interesting in terms of fit how they're going to use him. So it's just not really, could you have held on for one more day and take a look at like a Chase Young, which would have made more sense off the edge, and he was way cheaper too, financially. Well, because they had to make the Giants pay, but and compensation draft pick wise. So another weird one. And again, I'm not doubting like these players will be good for their teams, but it's just surprising. This was a small one yesterday. The Falcons get Kentavious Street, defensive lineman from the Eagles, and they also get a 2025 7th round pick. The Eagles get a 2024 6th round pick. So the Eagles move up around and a draft, actually, which they could have used. They could use more picks at the end of this year's draft. And the Falcons get Kentavious Street. Grady Jarrett did get injured this past week. This isn't a huge trade, so I don't go crazy with the grades, like an A+, the flashy grades or the terrible, terrible grades with these smaller trades. But I like it for the Eagles, and I don't really love it for the Falcons. It's not the end of the world for the Falcons, though. It's a small trade, but Eagles get an A as the guy that played 80 or so snaps this year, and they move up a draft and move up a round. They would love to, get an extra. They got an extra pick this year. They would love that. Being able to work with that. They're Howie Roseman very good with that. They have tremendous depth and great players in the defensive line. So for a guy that hasn't been playing either really for them at 80 or so snaps on the year, I think it was like 87. It's fantastic. So I give it an A. The Falcons, again, it's not like an awful trade, but you do lose a 6th round pick this year, and so you lose a pick this year. You don't get it till the 7th round next year. I wish it was kind of in the same year if they could have made it work. I know teams were kind of missing some picks, but in those spots. But for a kind of a rental, just because Grady Jarrett went down, they've signed interior defensive lineman this offseason. Is this really going to make or break the Falcons this year? Also, the Falcons are just in the business of like patching holes with, Van Jefferson. Like we need a receiver. Like we have these we definitely need a receiver. Let's go get Van Jefferson. He has a bad drop in 4th down. The Titans game is besides the point, but we need more pass rush, whether it's interior or off the edge. Let's go get a Kentavious Street. Like they're just like patching holes with like little minor things. So I don't know if I love that. I guess they don't really need to go out and just break the bank and, go for that big time player. I'm not really saying they have to do that, but it's just, it almost seems pointless. It almost seems pointless. So such a small trade, but there's more things. Again, every time these trades happen, I list off the positive, negatives, and which ones outweigh or outnumber the other ones. And it's just, you got a body in there is pretty much what you did with this one. That's kind of the positive for the Falcons. So I don't really, love that one for them. And going back to the Kevin Byer trade, that one happened like a week ago. So Kevin Byer for the Eagles. The Titans get three things. They get a 2024 fifth, sixth, and then Terrell Edmonds, the safety. So then here are my grades. The Eagles get an A+ for this one. It's kind of really the only thing they were missing was a big-time safety, and they get a star safety, big-time playmaker. This really boosted the Eagles in my mind, at least. They were already boosted, and it really okay, are they for sure the favorites in the NFC? That's kind of they added something, a spot where I didn't like with the Eagles. They added something big here that could help them win a Super Bowl, really. So, and they didn't have to give up tremendous value. So I gave it an A+. I kind of bumped this one up for the Titans. I kind of did that for all the teams with bad grades. There's a lot of negatives. They give up a big time player. And they didn't really get appropriate value. But I guess there are some positives. The Titans entering some sort of rebuild. They want to try Elijah Molden at free safety. They were really lacking picks, so you get multiple picks. Maybe they rather have the fifth and the sixth than just a fourth. Maybe they rather have the fifth, sixth, and Terrell Edmonds. So they do get multiple assets, so there is a little bit of positive in there that keeps it from being in the D range where it kind of started for me. But, just such a big piece of the Titans that, and you kind of got undervalued, you did get multiple assets. So it's at a C- for them. But back to more of the trades that happened today. The Vikings, and we got the grade right off the bat. So this was there's the details, and we already saw the grades. I gave the Vikings an A. I gave the Cardinals a C. We're going to explain it. So this is just weird. A strange season of trades because Josh Dobbs was traded to the Cardinals. He started every single game, and then all of a sudden traded to the Vikings. Traded to another team. So it's just pretty weird. It's pretty weird. And then it's a swap of picks, a 2024 7 and 6, so the Vikings move back around. But what I thought was weird was as a conditional 7th round pick, so that Vikings 7th round pick that they're getting back could actually turn into a 6th. So we're talking about the Vikings getting the Cardinals 6th, and the Cardinals getting the Vikings 6th. Most likely it's going to be a 6 for a 7. That's kind of the thing here. Most likely it's going to be that. But there's a chance it's a swap of 6, which is interesting. And that kind of leads us to the grades again. I was prepared to not like this for the Vikings. I was actually thinking, because the trade came out without the details for a little bit compared to the other trades. And I was thinking the Vikings probably gave up a 4th or a 5th round pick because you got a starting quarterback here. I know he's not the best in the world, but a starting quarterback all year. The Vikings were kind of desperate for a quarterback. They probably gave up something decent, and I was like, God, and I was thinking they probably traded maybe 4th was kind of the maximum I was thinking about. But I was really thinking 5th, and my thinking was is it worth it? Yeah, they get better with it because you got a starting quarterback, smart guy with experience, but is it worth it when you're not going to go win anything major? So I was expecting to give them a bad grade, but it ended up being a swap of picks, and then you factor in the conditions on the 7th round pick. And when are you able to trade halfway through the season? When are you able to trade for a quarterback that has started all year? It is insanely rare. So is it big enough to give out an A+? It almost sounds like an A+, but I don't know if it's big enough to give out the A+. I give it an A though. I don't really see any negatives. I guess the one thing I thought of, it was, all right, what if Jaron Hall, the rookie from BYU, who they might not have a lot of faith in with this trade, but he's going to play this week against the Falcons. What if he looks good? It's like, shit, we got to keep playing this guy. Then you just got Dobbs sitting there behind a rookie that you traded for. I guess that's the only downside, but you swap picks, and then the conditions probably kick in, and then you just swap 6th-round picks. And then if that's the case, Hall would probably be looking good. They might be winning games. So the 6th-round pick thing could work out for them very well. So there really isn't a negative for them in this one. The Cardinals, first glance, it's all right, they're done with Josh Dobbs. Even though they started him all year, they're done with them. They're going to go with Tune and then Kyler Murray the rest of the way, whatever. So they get something for him. So I was planning on grading them pretty high, but then you see that, it's a 7th, 6th swap, and then there's conditions on it. And you probably could, he seems to be popular around the NFL. Like somebody would have signed him. We see teams get late day 3 picks out of compensatory picks all the time. So they probably would have got us probably a 7th round pick without the swap, obviously. For him, I just don't understand the value. A guy, when are teams trading a guy that started all year? Like I thought they could have got. I was fully expecting a 5th round pick. If you'd have told me like before the details came out, it's not a 5th round pick, I would be like, shit, it's a 4th round pick. I'm like, so 6 at the worst, but they end up doing a swap with conditions on it. So I just thought they got lowballed on this one and just accepted it for a guy that's been starting all year. But it's not the end of the world, really. They're going to go in a different direction at this point. So interesting one. I'd imagine that Josh Dobbs is probably starting next week for the Vikings. That'd be my prediction. And are they going to go anywhere? Probably not, but they got a good, that's the other thing with the Vikings. Josh Dobbs, he's been coming back down to earth recently, but overall he's played pretty decent for Josh Dobbs, and then given that the Cardinals have arguably the worst roster in football, he's played pretty decent. Now he goes to the Vikings roster. I mean, Justin Jefferson will be back soon, and Jordan Addison, he's really taken off, and Hawkinson, having all these guys and the defense playing well. It's not unrealistic to think he can play well. He's not going to play great, but so and it's gonna be interesting too because he's nowhere near Kirk Cousins level, but having that mobility is gonna be different for the Vikings as well. So we'll see, but it's definitely just a weird one, just because he started all year and then is all of a sudden traded. And then speaking of the Vikings, they traded Ezra Cleveland to the Jags. They get a 2024 6th round pick. Thought the Jags and the Vikings can make another. I didn't really expect it anymore, but the Jags could deal for another Viking, maybe Danielle Hunter, but ends up being Ezra Cleveland on the offensive line. And an initial thought on this one, the initial thought is, well, the Vikings, Dalton Reisner took Ezra Cleveland's spot, and all of a sudden the Vikings offensive line is playing incredible, and that's kind of been their issue forever. So that's not a great look for Ezra Cleveland. I do think more so and Dalton Reisner's better. I think that's part of it, but the tackles are ridiculous for the Vikings right now. So, but yeah, he was a backup. I'll show my grades. But I still like this for both teams, but I like it a little bit more for the Jags because you do got a guy that maybe struggled the recent moments he played. But he's got experience. He's young with upside, has starting experience actually at guard in the NFL, but tackle in college. The Jaguars badly needed depth. He could fill in as a starter, but he's depth for both spots. Guard tackle has upside. Just give up a 6th round pick for him. I think it's pretty solid for the Jags. It's not the splash trade we expected. He could end up just being a depth guy, so it could be a little underwhelming, but it's a 6th round pick. So B+ for the Jags. For the Vikings, the positive is he was a backup. The offensive line's playing better right now. He was struggling a little bit. He's on an expiring deal, so they get a 6th round pick now for him. Those are pretty good positives. At the same time, for a 6th round pick, you could argue just keep him for insurance or depth. But he's on a 1-year deal. But but he is kind of high end depth for them. But I guess they've seen enough of him. So B+ for the Jags. They're both right around that same range. I thought about both B's, both B+. Thought the Jaguars slightly more, because again, he has upside. He goes to a familiar coach on the staff with the Jags. He can fill in at guard or tackle. This is a little more valuable for the Jags there in terms of the trade value. So on to the next one. This was a random one. I did not expect this one at all. The Lions trade for Donovan Peoples-Jones, the receiver from the Browns. The Browns get a 2025, not 2024, 2025 6th round pick. Just completely random. Was not expecting this one at all. And then my grades, A- for the Lions, C for the Browns. So for the Browns, this is weird to me. I mean, here's the positive, and I don't know if the positive really has anything to do with the trade. I don't know if it could really play a part in my trade grade here. But the positive is Cedric Tillman is probably the replacement. I like Cedric Tillman. I'd rather play Cedric Tillman than Donovan Peoples-Jones. Okay? So that maybe is we got to wait and see, though, how that works out. That's kind of the positive, but and he's the replacement for him, I would believe. But the negative is you didn't absolutely have to trade Donovan Peoples-Jones for, I would think, a little bit undervalued or a 2025. Get a 2024 at least, 6th round pick. They just had to get him out of here. Another thing is he's been underwhelming like production-wise, but he leads the Browns in wide receiver snaps this year. And he didn't get a decrease last week or anything. He leads the Browns in wide receiver snaps. So I know he's not productive, but they're putting him on the field for a reason. Physical guy, decent blocker. So they kind of need, I guess Cedric Tillman's going to come up, but they feel like they needed a receiver as it was, and they didn't add one here. So I thought it was a little weird. Again, Cedric Tillman, excited about him, but you can't really grade this a good grade because they're going to play Cedric Tillman now. It doesn't really make any sense. I thought it was undervalued. It's a next year pick. Was this a must? If anything, this could hurt them rather than help them. Not that it's going to kill them or anything like that. So I didn't really understand it, to be honest, other than, they'll play Tillman. But it's like, we want to play. I don't even know if that's the case. I'm just kind of speculating. But let's say it is. It's like, it's not how it works. You don't go, we want to play Tillman, so just get DPJ out of here no matter what it takes. Like, it's a little weird. I don't know. But it's not the worst thing in the world, I guess. Give the Browns a C. It was a weird trade. Lions gave an A-. You're adding another outside receiver. They got a long list of guys that can play. Physical guy. The Browns have been struggling at quarterback mainly because of the injuries, but even Watson was struggling a little bit. The Lions, Goff's not the greatest in the world, but he's going to sling the ball. He's going to get him the ball if he has opportunities. So I think it can help his play. He can play better. Worth a shot here. Worth a shot. So I like the Lions rotate guys in. You see packages with. You pretty much always see St. Brown and Laporte on the field, but you see packages with and without Reynolds or Jamison Williams, so you see different packages. I think that's what I like about the Lions, like the play designs and the variety in their playbook. Play calling you could question sometimes, but for Ben Johnson, the playbook, like how big it is, how different it is, and like teams kind of like are struggling, like what's going on here, and that's why guys are kind of schemed wide open a lot of times. So adding more to the collection, I like that as well. Now if they it would have been pretty different if they traded like a 2024 fifth. It wouldn't have been bad, but I wouldn't have liked it nearly as much. So 2025 sixth looks pretty good for them. Again, just a random trade that just was unexpected. I like when those happen though. And then this was maybe a little random, but the Bills were looking for a corner. And the Packers probably, should have just entered rebuild or some sort of retool mode. 2024 round 3 round pick. The graphics guy's just, he's got to be trolling me on purpose with that. I don't know. He really wanted me to read that. I did. He won. I read it. But yeah, so the Bills got their corner. I think they wanted Jalen Johnson. The Bears decided they wanted to keep him. I think that was good of the Bears. But so this is an interesting one as well. It's a pick swap, but it's a 3rd and a 5th round pick swap. So, and the Bills get a corner that will start for them. I think it's a little risky for the Bills because remember Rasul Douglas before life with the Packers? He was bouncing around every team in the NFL, and there was a reason he was there. The teams didn't like him. Like, they didn't think he was that good. And then he broke out with the Packers. So I think it's a little risky for the Bills, but I still like this for both teams overall. But yeah, could he just go back to being the Rasul Douglas that was for most of his career? I think most likely not. I think he'll find a way with that Bills defense. They're good enough on defense. They're well coached. He's been playing well. I think he'll be solid, but it's a little risky. And I know you swap picks, but you still do not have a 3rd round pick. Like the draft's going to come up. They're not going to be picking the 3rd round. It's because they traded for Rasul Douglas. When Tre'Davious White be coming back next year, they can start both. They can use both, obviously. But so that's the only thing. I do think there is some risk, but overall it's solid for the Bills. It helps them now. Is it going to be like that major move that really gives them a boost? Maybe not, but I think it gives them a boost. So B- felt right for them. It really was, even though it was a B-, it really wasn't close to being a C+. It was pretty much B-, B range. There's some risk in that one because Douglas just struggled to really figure it out, kind of had a big breakout year on the Packers. Are we sure? I'm confident, but are we sure it's going to work out for the Bills? I like this for the Packers. He has been their best corner this year, mainly because Alexander's been, hurt a little bit, but the Packers should be gathering draft capital. I know they didn't get a draft pick, but they gain a 3rd round pick. We're talking about a 3rd round pick. I value that pick very highly. So I think Douglas's value probably like with a lone pick, 4th or 5th would have been my guess. They gain, I know that's a swap, but they gain a third-round pick. They're going to have 2 picks in the third round, and they have an extra pick from Rodgers as well. This team needed better draft picks. In my opinion, they should be entering some sort of rebuild. So Douglas, 28, that's not old, but as they're trying to gather more talent and turn it around, where is he going to be at in his career? They also drafted Valentine late last year. This helps. I'm sure they'll add another corner, but it's like something they can hit on later in the draft. Again, this could help address those bigger needs. I think they'll still be on the lookout for a quarterback, running back, some run stoppers on defense, so some key things like that. So I like it. Again, it's a swap. It's not like it's a 3-4 swap or a 4-5 or one of those late swaps. It's a 3-5. They gain a third-round pick, and it's a good player for them, but I like it. It only had one more year on his deal after this, so I like it for the Packers. The only reason it's not, maybe why we got that minus tacked onto it is because, yeah, he's been their best. Is he their best corner? No, Alexander's the best corner, but he's been their best corner this year. You traded him away. Is that big of a deal though? So I like it for the Packers. I like it for the Bills too. Again, just a little bit of risk in that one. I do think they wanted a bigger option, like a better option like Jalen Johnson, but which that's the thing too. I probably would have taken a third or maybe a third and something else to trade for Jalen Johnson, which he's a bit better, I think, than Douglas. And they still give up a third, even though they get a pick back, but they still give up a third. But they get better with this. They need a corner. So overall, that boosts the Bills. So these teams that got players, they got better. I'm not saying they didn't, but that's the thing with the Bears case, though. They got better this year. Was that really what they want? I know they don't really want to think like that, but so some interesting trades. Let me know your guys' thoughts and grades. It was unfortunate I had to give out some bad grades. I know some fans are going to have a problem with that, but I have my logic. I have my reasonings here, and it is based on value. It's not based on how talented only how talented the players are. So, a lot of this talk on Twitter, which you guys follow us there. Bunch of content, weekly picks and more here on the channel. So join us for all that. Like, subscribe to notifications on. That's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.